Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. The Galactic Senate's horrifying discovery: humanity is most terrifying when kind. Ambassador Zelry's Moore of the Galactic Senate was having what his species called a three-moon disaster of a day. His four tentacle-like appendages trembled as he reviewed the latest report on his data pad. The humans were coming to the Senate, the actual living, breathing humans, and not just any humans. They were sending their top diplomatic team. By the 7 solar winds, Zelix muttered, his purple skin paling to a sickly lavender. This can't be happening. The rest of the Galactic Senate Preparation Committee didn't look much better. Representative Gao Lu from the methane-based Porbian Federation was literally bubbling with anxiety, while Admiral Tila of the Vargan Empire kept nervously clicking her mandibles together. "Let's review what we know," said High Chancellor Pora, her crystalline exoskeleton glinting under the chamber lights. She was the only one maintaining any composure. "The humans have accepted our invitation. After 57 standard galactic cycles of isolation, they will arrive tomorrow." "But why?" bellowed Ambassador Dro, a massive reptilian from the desert planet Scartha. "They've ignored us since the Proxima incident. Why suddenly accept?" Now everyone in the room flinched. The Proxima incident wasn't something anyone liked to discuss. It had been the galaxy's first and last attempt to forcefully incorporate humans into the Galactic Senate. 3 battle cruisers and an elite diplomatic team had been sent to the human colony on Proxima Centauri b. None returned, none returned. The only message received was a short, polite transmission. "Thank you for your interest in Earth and her colonies. At this time we must respectfully decline your invitation to join the Galactic Senate. Please do not attempt to coerce us again. Have a wonderful day." The passive-aggressive pleasantness, combined with the complete disappearance of 3 cutting-edge warships, sent a clear message to the galaxy: humans were not to be trifled with. "Have stated that they are interested in friendly diplomatic relations and potential trade opportunities," unquote, friendly repeated Xerix Moore with a nervous laugh. "Right, like when Captain Tanner of the Earth ship Polite Request destroyed the pirate fleet of Jagger the Merciless. 57 ships blasted into cosmic dust, and you know what the captain said afterward? Sorry for the mess." Admiral Tila's mandibles clicked furiously. The Mars colony expansion, the Dravid Consortium tried to claim the outer belt as theirs, and the humans just smiled and suggested they reconsider. When the Dravids refused, all their systems mysteriously failed, and their entire government received personal gift baskets with handwritten notes saying, "No hard feelings." "They're psychopaths," whispered Representative Gao Lu through his translator, bubbles forming rapidly in his containment suit. "No," corrected, said High Chancellor Pora. "They're humans, and tomorrow they'll be here, so we'd better figure out how to handle them without triggering whatever madness makes them smile while they destroy you." The arrival of the human diplomatic vessel was, in itself, terrifying. First of all, it was small, almost insultingly small. Most species arrived at the Galactic Senate in massive ships designed to impress, showcasing their technological prowess, military might, or cultural significance. The humans came in a sleek, unassuming ship that could fit in the cargo bay of most diplomatic vessels. It was painted a pleasant blue and white and had "Handshake" emblazoned on the side in multiple languages, including Standard Galactic. They named their ship Handshake. "Whispered handshake," said Zulrix to Admiral Tila as they stood in the reception area. "What does that even mean?" "It's a human greeting ritual," Tekla replied. "They grab each other's limbs and move them up and down." "That sounds horrible," Ziller said with a shudder. "Wait until you hear about hugging." Tekla clicked ominously. The ship docked with perfect precision, not a single adjustment needed, a subtle display of technical superiority that made several members of the welcoming committee shift uncomfortably. When the airlock cycled open, the assembled representatives of 17 different species collectively held their breath, or equivalent respiratory pause, if humans walked out. They were disappointingly normal-looking, bipedal, with symmetrical facial features, covered in fabric garments of various colors, no visible weapons, and minimal tech. Visible, they weren't even particularly large compared to many species. Leading them was a human with dark skin and short, curly hair, wearing a simple blue suit. Ziller was pretty sure this was a female human based on the briefings, smiled warmly at the assembled aliens. Greetings, esteemed representatives of the Galactic Senate. I'm Ambassador Olivia Jackson of Earth and the United Human Worlds. Thank you so much for having us, we've brought gifts. The other 4 humans stepped forward carrying beautifully wrapped packages. The entire welcoming committee took an instinctive step back. Ambassador Jackson's smile faltered slightly. They're just local delicacies and cultural items. Is everything okay? Hi, Chancellor Pora, the professional stepped forward. Welcome, Ambassador Jackson and human delegation. We are honored by your presence. The gifts are unexpected, but appreciated. Oh, it's nothing special, said one of the other humans, a tall male with auburn hair. Just some maple syrup from my family's farm in Canada, Earth. It goes great on breakfast foods. I'm Leon Wilson, Deputy Cultural Attaché, by the way. And I brought coffee beans, said another human, this one shorter with a cheerful, round face. I'm Dr. Pisha Kapoor, Scientific Liaison. Coffee is how most of us start our day, it's a mild stimulant that you brought. Drugs to the Galactic Senate, interrupted Drew, his scales bristling. Dr. Kapoor blinked. Well, technically, yes, but it's very mild, completely harmless. We thought sharing our daily rituals would help foster understanding. The final 2 humans introduced themselves as security specialist Marcus Alvarez and communications expert Talia Novak. They, too, had brought gifts, a collection of earth music and a plant called a peace lily, respectively. The peace lily is nearly impossible to kill, Talia explained cheerfully. Even if you forget to water it for weeks, it bounces right back. The entire Senate committee exchanged worried glances. Was this some kind of metaphor for humanity's resilience, a veiled threat? We've prepared quarters for you, High Chancellor Pora, said one committee member quickly. Perhaps you'd like to rest after your journey before the formal welcome ceremony. That would be lovely, Ambassador Jackson, she replied with another warm smile. Though we're quite adaptable to new environments, humans are good at making themselves at home just about anywhere. Several members of the committee visibly flinched at the statement as the humans were escorted to their quarters. Zelier pulled Tekla aside. Did you notice? He whispered urgently. Notice what? The threatening plant, the drug offering, the ominous talk of adaptability? No, they were being nice. Genuinely nice, not the scary nice like the Proxima incident, but actually pleasant. Tekla's mandibles clicked, thinking thoughtfully. That's what worries me. Zilix, the nicer they act, the more dangerous they usually are. The formal welcome ceremony was scheduled for later that day in the Grand Chamber, where all 247 member species would be present. It was meant to be an impressive display of the Senate's power and unity, but as the time approached, a strange thing happened. Various representatives began approaching the human delegation's quarters, bringing their own gifts and offering private meetings. What is happening? Demanded High Chancellor Pora when she discovered this unauthorized fraternization. The humans are supposed to be isolated until the formal ceremony. Zilix checked his data pad. It seems Ambassador Jackson invited several representatives for what she called tea, another human beverage. Apparently, they discussed mutual interests and possible trade agreements. The Floraxians are particularly excited about something called solar panel technology. They're dividing us, Dro growled, picking off potential allies before we can present a united front, or suggested Representative Gaolu cautiously. They're just being friendly. The group stared at the methane breather as if he'd suggested they all jump into a black hole for fun. Impossible, said Admiral Tila, remember the Proxima incident and the Mars expansion. Added Dro, and Captain Tanner's polite request, said Zorex. Chancellor Pora raised all 4 of her arms for silence. Whatever game they're playing, we need to maintain control of this situation. The ceremony begins in 1 hour, I want everyone on high alert. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Senate was a spectacular sight, a massive circular room with rising tiers of seating for all member species arranged according to when they joined the Senate. The newest members sat at the bottom, closest to the central speaking platform, as guests rather than members. The humans were given a special box near the platform. They entered precisely on time and took their seats, with polite nods to the surrounding representatives. Chancellor Pora began the ceremony with the traditional invocation of peace and cooperation, followed by a brief history of the Senate for the benefit of the human guests. And now she concluded, we invite Ambassador Olivia Jackson of Earth and the United Human Worlds to address the Senate. Ambassador Jackson walked to the central platform with calm confidence. She wore a different outfit now, still blue, but more formal, with subtle embroidery that caught the light. She carried no notes or data pad. Esteemed representatives of the Galactic Senate, she began, her voice clear and strong without being intimidating, thank you for this honor. 7 galactic cycles ago, our worlds had a misunderstanding, today, we hope to begin anew. She paused, looking around the chamber. Humanity has spent these cycles focusing on our own development, but we've come to recognize that isolation doesn't serve anyone's best interests. We're ready to engage with the broader galactic community in a spirit of mutual respect and cooperation. What about the Proxima incident? Called out a voice from the upper tiers. Protocol dictated that questions come after the address, but tensions were high. Ambassador Jackson didn't seem bothered by the interruption. It's a regrettable misunderstanding. 3 of your vessels entered our space without permission and refused to leave when asked politely, we were forced to escort them elsewhere. You destroyed 3 battle cruisers, the same voice accused. Oh no, Jackson said with a gentle laugh, nothing so wasteful, they're quite intact, actually. A murmur swept through the chamber. Then where are they? Demanded Drew, rising from his seat in a secure location. Jackson replied pleasantly, we'd be happy to return them as a gesture of goodwill now that we're establishing formal relations. High Chancellor Pora leaned forward. You've kept our ships for 57 cycles. Well, we weren't exactly on speaking terms, Jackson said with a small shrug. But they've been well maintained, we're good with technology, you know, very detail-oriented. The casual way she referenced holding on to 3 advanced warships for over 5 decades, keeping them well maintained no less, sent a chill through the chamber. But enough about past misunderstandings, Jackson continued brightly. We're here to talk about the future. Earth and her colonies are interested in trade, cultural exchange, and scientific collaboration. We have much to offer the Senate, and we're sure there's much we can learn from you. She went on to outline various human technologies and resources that might be of interest, renewable energy systems, terraforming techniques, agricultural methods, and medical advances, all presented as friendly offerings, with no hint of superiority or demand. It was the most terrifying speech many in the chamber had ever heard because, underneath the pleasant words and warm smiles, was an unmistakable subtext, look what we developed while we were ignoring you, imagine what we could do if we put our minds to it. As Ambassador Jackson concluded her address, the chamber remained silent for several moments before erupting into the loudest applause ever recorded in Senate history. No one wanted to be the species that didn't enthusiastically welcome the humans back. In the preparation committee's private chamber, panic had fully set in. Did you see that? Zix was practically shouting, his tentacles waving frantically. They didn't destroy those ships, they kept them or studied them for 57 cycles, and they maintained them. Whispered Admiral Tila, her mandibles completely still for once, do you have any idea how advanced those ships would be if humans have been tinkering with them all this time? The real question, said High Chancellor Pora grimly, is why they're choosing to return them now. What changed? Maybe nothing changed, suggested Representative Gaolu. Maybe they're genuinely interested in diplomacy now. Dro snorted, a puff of hot air escaping his nostrils. Humans don't change, they conquer. They dominated their own planet, wiping out countless species and each other for millennia. Then they spread to the stars and did the same. But they've been peaceful for centuries, Gaolu countered. Their inter-species conflicts ended long ago, only because they turned their attention outward. Dro growled, and now they've turned it toward us. Chancellor Pora's communication device chimed. She checked it, and her crystalline structure seemed to pale. Ambassador Jackson has requested a private meeting with the Security Council tomorrow morning. She says she has concerns she wishes to discuss. What concerns could they possibly have? Asked Ziller in incredulity. I don't know, Pora replied, but I have a feeling we're not going to like the answer. Outside, in the corridor, unbeknownst to the panicking committee, Ambassador Olivia Jackson paused on her way back to the human quarters. She turned to Leon Wilson with a puzzled expression. Is it just me, or are they all acting a little strange around us? Leon nodded slowly. Definitely strange, almost like they're afraid. But why would the Galactic Senate be afraid of us? Olivia wondered. We're just trying to be friendly. No idea, Leon replied with a shrug. But we should probably bring it up at tomorrow's meeting, clear the air. Good thinking, Olivia agreed. The last thing we want is for anyone to get the wrong impression about humanity. They continued down the corridor, completely unaware that their very politeness was causing a diplomatic crisis of unprecedented proportions. Behind them, lurking in the shadows, Admiral Tila had overheard everything. Her mandibles clicked in silent horror. They don't even realize how terrifying they are, she whispered to herself. Which makes them even more terrifying. Tomorrow's Security Council meeting is going to be interesting, to say the least. The Security Council chamber of the Galactic Senate was designed to intimidate. Unlike the grand, open architecture of the main chamber, the Security Council room was deliberately claustrophobic, a small circular space with a single entrance and no windows. The walls were lined with quantum-dampening materials that prevented any form of electronic surveillance, and the lighting was kept dim enough that most species would find it uncomfortable. The idea was simple: make visitors nervous, make them sweat, make them reveal more than they intended. Unfortunately, Ambassador Olivia Jackson and her human delegation seemed completely unbothered by the setting. What lovely acoustics in here, she commented as she took her seat at the round table. Do you ever host musical performances in this space? The resonance would be fantastic for certain Earth instruments. High Chancellor Pora, who was chairing the Security Council meeting, blinked all 6 of her eyes in confusion. This is not a concert hall, Ambassador Jackson. This is where we discuss the most sensitive security matters in the galaxy. Of course, Jackson replied with an easy smile. I just appreciate thoughtful design, form following function, and all that. The other members of the Security Council exchanged glances. Besides High Chancellor Pora, the council consisted of Admiral Tila, Ambassador Dro, General Kra of the militant Vargan Empire Cass, and Supreme Judge Nimula of the Ancient Etherborn Collective. None of them seemed to know how to respond to the humans' casual demeanor. Security Specialist Marcus Alvarez, who had accompanied Jackson, was examining the room with professional interest. Quantum dampening composite in the walls, smart. We use something similar in our diplomatic facilities, he said, giving an appreciative nod to General Kra. Military background, sir, I recognize that posture anywhere, added General Kra, a towering insectoid with 4 arms and mandibles that could crush Dursteel. He seemed startled at being directly addressed. Yes, 57 campaigns, 312 victories, Alvarez whistled, impressed. That's quite a record. I'd love to discuss strategy sometime, if you're willing. Always looking to learn from the best. General Kra's compound eyes narrowed suspiciously, unsure if he was being mocked or genuinely complimented. Perhaps we should begin, interjected High Chancellor Pora, trying to regain control of the meeting. Ambassador Jackson, you requested this session. You mentioned concerns. Yes, thank you for accommodating us, Jackson said, her expression growing more serious. We've noticed some concerning patterns in the Outer Rim territories, specifically, signs of what appears to be an organized slave trade targeting pre-spaceflight civilizations. The room went silent. Bed slave trade? Admiral Tila finally asked, her mandibles clicking rapidly. Yes, Jackson continued, pulling out a small device and placing it on the table. A holographic display appeared, showing star maps and various data points over the past 20 standard years. Approximately 47 developing worlds have experienced unexplained population decreases. Our long-range monitoring systems detected unusual ship traffic consistent with unauthorized landings and departures. Your monitoring systems can detect ship movements that far from your territory, General Kra, he demanded, leaning forward. Jackson blinked. Well, yes, standard observation protocols. We like to keep an eye on developing civilizations, cultural preservation, and all that, from 80 light-years away. Is that unusual? Drew growled. Jackson asked, genuinely puzzled. Security Specialist Alvarez cleared his throat. Perhaps we're getting off track. The issue is the apparent abduction of sentient beings from protected worlds. We've traced the ship's signatures to a region bordering Scar the space. He nodded respectfully to Ambassador Drew. Though we don't believe the Scarthan government is involved. Drew's scales bristled. You certainly are not accusing us, are you? Not at all, Jackson said soothingly. We believe it's a non-aligned group using the complex nebula formations in that region as cover. We're bringing this to the Security Council rather than handling it ourselves because, well, we're new here. We want to respect established protocols. The unspoken implication hung in the air, we could deal with this ourselves, but we're being polite. What evidence do you have of these abductions? Asked Supreme Judge Nimula, her ethereal voice barely above a whisper. Jackson nodded to Alvarez, who adjusted the holographic display. Satellite imagery from various worlds showed unregistered vessels landing near population centers, followed by demographic data showing missing persons cross-referenced with ship movements and known pirate activities. The display showed dozens of worlds, thousands of data points, all meticulously documented and analyzed. This is very thorough, said High Chancellor Pora carefully. How long have you been investigating this matter? Oh, we only noticed the pattern about 6 standard months ago, Jackson replied casually. Once we decided to open diplomatic relations, we did a comprehensive security review of the regions bordering our space. This stood out. 6 months, they whispered among themselves. They had gathered intelligence that would have taken the Senate's own security forces years to compile, and they'd done it in 6 months, as a side project. I see, Pora said, her crystalline structure changing color slightly with stress. And what action are you proposing? Well, we thought a joint operation would be appropriate, said Jackson, smiling again. A combined human and Senate force to investigate these activities and rescue any victims. It would be a wonderful opportunity for our military and security personnel to work together, don't you think, General Kra? General Kra made a sound that might have been a laugh or a growl. You want to deploy human military forces alongside Senate vessels after the Proxima incident? Oh, speaking of which, Jackson said brightly, as if just remembering, those 3 ships we promised to return, they're actually on their way now. They should arrive within the week, fully crewed with the original personnel, of course. The original personnel, repeated Admiral Tila, her voice rising in octave. After 57 cycles. Well, they spent most of that time in cryosleep, Alvarez explained. Standard procedure when dealing with unauthorized incursions is to put the crews in suspended animation while we figure out what to do with them. Once we decided to reach out to the Senate, we began the wake-up and rehabilitation process. The casual way he described keeping hundreds of Senate personnel frozen for decades was chilling. Even more disturbing was the implication that this was standard procedure, suggesting it had happened before. They've been thoroughly debriefed, of course, Jackson added helpfully. And we've provided them with updated training on their own vessel systems. We made some minor improvements over the years during maintenance cycles, nothing major, just efficiency tweaks. The Security Council members exchanged looks of barely disguised horror. The humans had not only captured 3 advanced warships and kept their crews in suspended animation for 5 decades, but they'd also improved the ships and then trained the original crews on the new systems. How thoughtful, High Chancellor Pora managed to say. It seemed like the decent thing to do. Jackson replied with a gentle shrug. After the meeting concluded, the Security Council remained in the chamber while the human delegation was escorted back to their quarters. The moment the door sealed behind them, pandemonium erupted. Did you hear that? Drew roared, slamming his massive fist on the table. They've been spying on the entire Outer Rim, Makanka, for decades, and they just admitted to holding our personnel in suspended animation. Admiral Tila added, her mandibles clicking so rapidly they were almost a blur, as if it were nothing unusual. The real question, General Kra interjected, his compound eyes gleaming, is why. Tell us now, why reveal their capabilities so openly? Supreme Judge Nimula's ethereal form wavered slightly as she spoke, because they're confident we can do nothing about it. They're showing us their teeth while smiling. High Chancellor Pora raised her arms for silence. We need to think carefully about our response. The humans have presented us with an opportunity disguised as a crisis. This slave trade they've uncovered, if it exists, is abhorrent and must be stopped, but allowing human military forces to operate freely within Senate space could be catastrophic. Finished, added Admiral Tila. But refusing their offer would make us appear either complicit or incompetent. Exactly, Pora nodded. They've maneuvered us masterfully. What do we actually know about human combat capabilities? General Kra's tactical mind already assessed potential scenarios beyond the rumors and the Proxima incident. An uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber. Not enough, Admiral Tila finally admitted. Their military vessels are rarely seen outside their territory. Their technology appears advanced, but not drastically beyond our own. However, prompted Drew, they consistently understate their capabilities. Remember how Captain Tanner's ship, Polite Request, was registered as a light patrol vessel. It eliminated 57 pirate ships without sustaining any significant damage, and their defensive systems are extraordinary. Added General Kra, no successful attack has ever been recorded against a human world or major installation, so we're damned if we accept their help and damned if we reject it. High Chancellor Pora tapped her fingers on the table thoughtfully. Perhaps not, perhaps there's a third option. Ambassador Olivia Jackson was enjoying a cup of coffee in the human delegation's quarters when her communication device chimed. The message was from High Chancellor Pora requesting another meeting, this time with only Jackson and no other representatives from either side. Interesting, she murmured, showing the message to Leon Wilson, who was reviewing data on his tablet nearby. A private conversation ensued. Leon raised an eyebrow. That's promising. Maybe they're starting to trust us. Jackson wasn't so sure. In her experience, private meetings usually meant someone had something to hide, but she was curious enough to accept the invitation. An hour later, she found herself in a small garden area she hadn't seen before. It was clearly designed for diplomatic tete-a-tetes, private but not secretive, comfortable but not too casual. High Chancellor Pora was already waiting, her crystalline form reflecting the soft ambient lighting. Thank you for meeting with me, Ambassador, Pora said, gesturing to a seat configured for human anatomy. My pleasure, High Chancellor, Jackson replied, taking the offered seat. This is a lovely space, one of my favorites. Pora admitted, sometimes the formality of the Senate chambers can be counterproductive. Jackson smiled. I couldn't agree more. There was a moment of silence as Pora seemed to gather her thoughts. Finally, she spoke, Ambassador Jackson, I'm going to be direct. The Security Council is concerned about your proposal for a joint military operation. I suspected, as much. Jackson nodded. Is it because of the Proxima incident? Because I can assure you. Pora held up a hand. It's not just that. It's everything, the way your delegation arrived in an unassuming vessel, the casual references to technology far beyond what you've officially disclosed, the fact that you've been monitoring civilizations across the galaxy without our knowledge. Jackson blinked, genuinely surprised. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Have we done something wrong? Hora's crystalline structure shifted colors slightly, the equivalent of a human sigh. That's just it, Ambassador. You don't even realize how you come across. To put it bluntly, your species terrifies most of the Senate. Terrifies, Jackson repeated, stunned. But we've been nothing but friendly. We brought gifts, we've been respectful of all protocols. Yes, Hora said. That's exactly the problem. The nicer you are, the more terrifying you become. Perhaps for the first time in her diplomatic career, Ambassador Olivia Jackson was speechless. Hora continued, when most species make threats, they posture, they growl, they display weapons. When humans make threats, they smile, they offer gifts, they speak softly about their concerns, and then, if they don't get what they want, entire fleets disappear. But that's not, Jackson began, then stopped. She thought about the Proxima incident from the Senate's perspective, about Captain Tanner's infamous battle against the pirates, about the Mars expansion conflict. Oh, she said quietly, I think I understand now. Deprosted, do you? Hora asked, sounding genuinely curious. Jackson nodded slowly. You think we're being passive-aggressive, that our politeness is just a facade covering underlying aggression, isn't it? Hora challenged, no. Jackson insisted, then paused. Well, not intentionally, at least. Humans value diplomacy and peaceful resolutions, we only resort to force when necessary, and we believe that being pleasant and respectful is simply the right way to treat others, even when you're putting their crews in cryo-sleep for 57 cycles. Hora asked pointedly, Jackson, wince, that was a complicated situation. But you have to understand, from our perspective, we were being merciful. The alternative would have been to treat them as hostile combatants, which means, well, in ancient times it would have meant destroying their vessels, in more recent centuries, it would have meant imprisonment. Cryosuspension seemed the most humane option while we determined whether the incursion was an isolated incident or the beginning of a larger conflict. Hora's crystalline structure shifted again, this time to a deeper blue. So you're saying that keeping our people frozen for decades was you being nice? Jackson hesitated, then nodded. By our standards, yes. By the 7 solar winds. Hora whispered, that's exactly what I meant.